presidential candidate, the former Massachusetts governor, William Weld. Guys, thanks very much for joining us. Michael Bloomberg seems to be reaching out to not only independents, but to libertarians when he made that statement. What was your reaction?
Well, he could have been making that same speech for Bill Weld and Gary Johnson. So good speech. And that's what we're looking to reach out to also.
He says, Michael Bloomberg, the country needs a sane, competent person, suggesting Donald Trump is not sane or competent. You agree with him on that?
Well, I certainly have my differences with Donald Trump. Let me just put this scenario out there. Either Trump or Clinton get elected. Republicans are not going to get along with Democrats. Democrats are not going to get along with Republicans. It's going to be more polarized than ever. How about a couple of guys in the middle, the big 6-lane highway down the middle, reaching out to both sides, telling them to come together and let's address the problems that this country's facing.
Governor Weld, do you think Trump is sane and competent?
No, I understood what Mayor Bloomberg was saying. I did not think he was describing Donald Trump. I think further to what Gary was saying, we represent a mix of policy views that neither party stands for. We're fiscally responsible. We can prove that. We both cut budgets and tamed the budget in our states and balanced them. And we're about as inclusive and tolerant and open-minded socially as you can be. And I don't think that describes the Republican Party these days. So we offer you fiscally responsible, socially liberal or inclusive, and nobody else really does.
But do you really believe it's realistic that the two of you will be elected president and vice president?
Yes.
You do believe that?
Yes.
Neither of us would be doing it if that opportunity didn't exist. And, of course, that's getting to 15% in the polls. We have a campaign starting 15% by the 15th.
Because the 15% is critically important because in order to appear in those three presidential debates, one vice presidential debate, you have to be at 15% in a series of 5 polls going into their decision. Is that right?
That's right. And I saw last week where they're projecting an audience bigger for the first presidential debate than the Super Bowl. So no way that you have a chance of winning without being in that Super Bowl game.
That 15% figure has been historically true, Wolf, and Gary's been polling 12 and 13%, so we're not far away. But I would say there's a national interest in having us in the debates because we represent a point of view that neither major party does. And in fact, my villain this year is the duopoly, the two-party monopoly, and the Republicans and the Democrats seem to exist primarily for the purpose of killing each other and having gridlock in Washington.
But you agree if you don't get into those presidential and vice presidential debates, the chances are slim.
Slim.
So that is critical right now.
Critical.
You got to get to that 15%. If you get to the 15%, is it realistic to believe you think you could win, but get 270 electoral college votes in November?
It becomes possible. It becomes possible. Anything can happen if that is the case. And Bill stated these policy positions. Look, third leg of the stool would be the military interventions that this country has been embarked on that we're going to argue have had the unintended consequence of making things worse, not better. And we are not isolationists. Donald Trump's isolationist. We're non-interventionist.
We're also the only free trade ticket still out there.
So you support the Trans-Pacific Partnership?
We support TPP. We support NAFTA. I can remember being in the White House with Bill Clinton.
You just alienated potentially a lot of Bernie Sanders.
No, I understand that. You know, we made a vow to each other to tell the truth. But I can remember working on NAFTA with President Clinton and Speaker Gingrich in the White House to round up the votes.
So you like NAFTA
to pass that? I do.
You do
I like
too.
free trade.
As governors, my pledge to New Mexico as governor was, look, I'm going to sign on to anything that makes things better. None of these trade agreements are exactly like you want to see them, but do they make things better in the case of the Trans-Pacific Partnership? Yeah, it's more toward free trade. I think another misunderstood conception is that free trade is on the other end of crony capitalism. I think we've come to associate crony capitalism and free trade as a needle pointing in the same direction when they are genuinely opposite.
I had an exchange with Mitt Romney on June 10th out in Utah, and we spoke about the two of you. Let me play the clip, and then we'll discuss. And this third-party Libertarian candidate, the former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson, would you consider supporting him?
Well, I'm going to look at what he has to say. His running mate, Bill Weld, is someone who I respect enormously.
Former Republican governor of Massachusetts.
Exactly, and he was a fine governor, a fine friend, a supporter of mine, both in 2008 and 2012. If Bill Weld were at the top of the ticket, it would be very easy for me to vote for Bill Weld for president. So I'll get to know Gary Johnson better and see if he's someone who I could end up voting for. That's something which I'll evaluate over the coming weeks and months.
So you're not necessarily ruling out that possibility?
I'm not ruling that out.
Has he reached out to you, Governor Johnson?
Well, let Bill talk about it, but we have a mutual admiration society when it comes to Bill Weld, beyond my wildest...
No, but have you spoken to Mitt Romney since he made those widely publicized remarks?
Yes, we have.
And how did that conversation go?
Well, I think he's considering the possibility of doing this, and look, you don't...
Considering the possibility of doing what?
Actually endorsing the two of us.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you know him a lot better. You were governor of Massachusetts.
He's thinking about it, Wolf, and I don't want to press the point unless and until we get to 15%, because then I think the case for it is overwhelming. You know, a couple of the Bushes have already come out in support of us. We're very hopeful that Governor Jeb Bush might see his way clear to supporting the ticket, but whether or not they do, we're creeping up on that figure that will get us in the debates, and I can almost guarantee you if we get to 15, we're going to get to 20%, and at that point we are extremely dangerous as a ticket. Nobody can say we didn't change our states. We succeeded Democratic governors, and we cleaned up the fiscal mess, and we're socially tolerant.
Who are the two Bushes that have endorsed you?
Marvin Bush yesterday, and Jonathan Bush of Boston is supporting us financially.
So that's so you're encouraged.
He's all in, he says.
You think you realistically have a chance? You're not just a spoiler.
Right.
Well, neither of us, that might be kind of fun, but that's not my idea of...
One final question. If you don't get in the debates, you don't have a chance. Who would you prefer, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, if you don't get in the debates?
Well, since 1971, there has always been a Libertarian candidate, so I'd have to go on a Libertarian candidate, whomever that was.
Well, that's you. You're the nominee. And you're the nominee. Governor and governor.
Pleasure being with you.
Thanks very much for joining us. Appreciate it very much.